Hi everyone, good afternoon. This is Deepak. Just doing a quick audio check. Can you all hear me? And can you all see the screen? You can respond either in the chat window or in the questions window. Okay. And thank you for responding, Ravi Raj. Can you also see the screen clearly? I hope the first. Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Mohit. Thanks, Ravi Raj. Welcome everyone. Just give me a minute and we'll get started. So welcome back, everyone. Looks like we are a small group of people, just the six of us, seven including myself. So what we'll do is we'll first look into. I'm basically letting you know the agenda of this particular session. I'm sure you've read about it, but what we'll do is we'll quickly cover the cloud computing industry in general, what basically cloud computing means, and why should you be excited, right, about this particular development, and what does it mean for you as a working professional to look at cloud computing and explore possible opportunities for yourself. Now, before getting into the content of the webinar and before discussing aspects about the cloud industry, right, within the IT industry itself, uh, I would want to know how many of you, in fact, are presently working in the IT industry, right? Are any of you from other verticals, other domains, right, and not from IT industry? Can we have a quick poll here? You can respond in the questions window. So Raviraj, Mohit, Chitra, Raghav, Jagdish, are you all from the IT industry? Can we have a quick poll? Okay. So Mohit says he's from the IT industry. Raghav is also from IT industry. Okay, all of you. Right. Jagdish, Raviraj. Wonderful. Thanks a lot, guys. So that helps. So my assumption would be you already know something about cloud. Is there anyone amongst you who doesn't know absolutely anything about cloud computing? Right. Um, so you could let me know and I'll base my talk accordingly. Right. Do you all have an idea of what cloud computing is? Do we have anybody who doesn't know what cloud computing is? Okay. So Raghav says he has a 10,000 feet view. Okay, so my assumption is you would have looked at some definitions of cloud computing and maybe have discussions about it. Thanks, Raghav. How about other people? Jagdish, Raviraj, Chitra, Mohit. Okay, so Ravi knows the fundamentals. Wonderful. What about Jagdish, Chitra, and Mohit? So I'm asking all of you specifically is because since it's a small group of people that we have here, so it's easier for me to understand each one of you, and then we can have the discussion accordingly, so that it's a value addition for all of you after we finish today's session. Okay, so Jagdish knows the concepts. Cool. Okay. Okay, so Mohit, okay, he's working with TCS, and Chitra knows basics of cloud. All right, so I have what I needed in terms of information. So the good thing is all of you know a little bit about cloud computing, which helps me, make the assumption that we can discuss about the industry itself rather than going into the basic definitions, right? So let's get started with today's talk. So what are we talking about today? Right, what's happening in the IT industry? Where is so when I say IT industry, it's not just about the Indian IT industry, it's also about the global IT industry, right? So where are we headed towards, and what's happening with various companies, right? Both small and large, both startups and large enterprises like TCS, or medium-sized companies, right, like Mindtree, for example, and so on. What's happening with all these companies? And not just the IT companies, right? All of you would appreciate the fact that IT by itself is a function that primarily serves other kinds of businesses, right? So Flipkart, when it uses IT and technology, it's primarily to support its seller business, right? Retail business. Ola and Uber, if they are using technology and app-based services, they're primarily a transportation company, but technology obviously helps them, right, scale up their business and make them profitable and so on. So what's happening in the industry and what's happening with all these companies, right? So all of them, right, most of the companies have evolved with time. If you look at the last 2 decades, things have changed radically, and lot of fundamental technologies have come into the picture, right? So for example, with things from smartphones to higher bandwidths, right, to highly efficient networking equipments, cheap hardware, right, and telecom revolution, all of that has really come together to give us altogether a new customer experience, right? Today we no more talk about our struggles with the data speeds that you had in the era of GPRS, right, or dial-up connections, for that matter. Today we no longer talk about getting a camera person dedicatedly from a studio and capturing your pictures. Uh, you basically have a smartphone with which has a high-end camera both on the back side or on the front side, and fundamentally people click pictures every now and then, right? You have gigabytes of information created just out of a 2-day field trip, right, with your friends. So a lot has happened in the last 2 decades or so, and the pace of change, the pace of innovation has really taken a new high in the last 10 years, specifically with the advent of cloud computing, right? So companies have evolved, and companies are spending less and less time wrestling with their servers, right? Companies do not want to do that. They do not want to grapple with their hardware. They do not want to have in-house staff specifically trained on different technologies, because technologies change, and especially non-IT companies do not want to see IT as a value addition, because it is not, right? The harsh fact is IT is a burden for a lot of companies, and it takes a large chunk of revenue from their pockets, right? So companies don't want to deal with servers, and the fact in business is, no matter how many services you use, for example, if Uber comes to you and tells you, hey, I use about 1,000 servers or 1 million servers, right, to service customers like you, and Uber is giving you really bad service, as a customer, you will not care about Uber, right? How many services or how many servers Uber might be using, right? Similarly, if tomorrow Netflix goes down, right, every now and then, and as a customer you're really not fascinated about the customer experience that you have, the site keeps on going down, if the app keeps on crashing every now and then, you will really not worry about how many servers Netflix might be using in the background, right? Because as a customer you don't care about it, right? So as a company, as a business, you only get points for using you only get points for serving your users. You really don't get any points for using servers and using fancy hardware, right? So as a business you should be customer centric, and why cloud has become really famous not just famous for the sake of Google search, but really adopted in the industry at a massive scale, is because it does exactly this. It allows companies to focus on their core businesses, and it allows companies to focus their revenues and all of their strengths into making their customers happy and not worrying about IT. Right? What you see in front of on the screens right now are examples of companies that have used cloud computing, that have leveraged the services provided by cloud computing providers to scale up, right? To grow globally, not just in their domestic markets. And these companies do not own their own data centers. These companies do not own massive amounts of hardwares. These companies do not have a huge pool of staff to take care of their hardware or data center stacks, right? They focus all their energies in building intuitive, engaging products for their customers, right? And there's a very famous term which I really like, and which really represents what's happening today. So some of these companies are born on cloud, right? Somebody had a great idea about an app or a website or an API service or so on. And with that idea, because today due to cloud computing, you do not have to worry about, hey, where will I get my 10 servers or 2 terabytes of storage space, or where do I get my DBMS service from? How do I take care of my identity service and so on, right? So if you have a great idea in this day and age, you can actually go and implement it, build a nice proof of concept, show it to your investors, and guess what? It's not just for proof of concepts. Companies like Netflix, yesterday there was an interesting stat. So companies like Netflix, which account for 25% of the internet traffic, imagine the scale of internet at a global level, and imagine one single company accounting for 1/4 of the global traffic, right? That is Netflix for you. And Netflix is a company which uses Amazon Web Services, amongst other providers, to thrive globally, right? Tomorrow, if Netflix has to launch in another geography or in a totally new country, they can do so in a span of hours, or maybe in minutes, right? Depending on what service you're launching. But that's the scale we have reached to. And if you imagine the traditional old IT, you would remember, if you put up a request with your IT administrator or IT support team, it would probably take if not months, at least multiple weeks for you to get that request done, right? If it was about adding a new storage node or adding a new actual physical server or a machine, right? So cloud has changed a lot of things, right? And companies are being born on cloud, and companies are leveraging the scale and the availability of cloud computing to their strengths. And the most important aspect out of all of these things is the cost, right? Uh, why do I say that? Because in terms of cost, cloud allows you to avoid all of the upfront capital expenditure and purely focus on just the OpEx, right? The operational expenditure. And you basically pay only for what you use. So if you're using 2 virtual machines, that's what you pay for, right? If you're using those 2 virtual machines only for the next 30 minutes, that is what you will pay for, right? Unlike buying two physical machines and keeping them with close to your heart forever, and irrespective of whether you use it or not, you'll basically end up paying for that, right? So just a few statistics to get your attention and to basically explain you the scale of the cloud computing industry that it has reached, right, in the last couple of years. And how does it look? How does the future look like, right? If you look at the top left corner, right, it's an old number, right? I'll be honest with you, it's an old number. It has been revised, and according to people like Gartner, one of the most widely accepted agencies in the world, cloud computing as a market will be more than $200 billion by 2020, right? In the next 2 years, or in the next just 1.5 years, right? Globally, right? So $162 billion is an old statistic, but just as early as yesterday, Gartner mentioned that more than $200 billion of money is going to be spent in the cloud domain. On the top right side of you of this particular slide, you see 85% of the companies are using multiple cloud platforms, right? That is as close as the entire industry on a global scale trying to use cloud computing for something or the other depending on their business, right? And it's not just about just using either AWS or Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud, but these companies are using multiple cloud platforms, right? That speaks volumes, and that speaks about the adoption rate that the industry is seeing, right? If you also look at the second row here, just the first two squares, right? So AWS and Azure are clearly the market leaders. Of course, these numbers keep on changing quarter on quarter, but the top three cloud providers, if you had to rate them, and if you had to upskill yourself in the area of cloud computing, so those top three players would be AWS, Microsoft Azure, as well as Google Cloud, right? So clearly the market is there. The market has been there for the last many years, and it is poised to stay healthy, at least for the next 5 to 10 years at a minimum, right? You might come back and ask, hey, all of this is great, the statistics look good, but is it just a global trend or is it happening in India as well, right? So the good news is it is happening in India as well. And it is happening more so robustly in India because we have a largely prevalent services industry. We do projects that are outsourced from other countries. We do projects that are driven by our clients, right? And out of the $150 billion IT industry that the Indian IT industry is, most of it comes from the services sector, right? Large companies like TCS, Infosys, IBM, Capgemini, CTS, Accenture, and so on. Of course, they also do consulting, but that's a small portion of their revenue, right? So the shift to cloud computing, projects moving from legacy IT to cloud computing, right? As a consequence, job roles, job profiles getting outdated, right? And then job roles needing to upskill themselves, right? The job openings themselves are changing because companies are changing, and because why do they have to change? Because the customers need to embrace that change, right? So tomorrow, if a European client or North American client comes to you and says, hey, we need to move to cloud, right? And we need to move to cloud in the next 3 months. I don't think as a service company, you really have a great deal of option, right? If your customer wants to move to cloud, right, you might decide the details of it, but the decision for you and for us has already been made. So the idea of moving to cloud computing is happening in India as well, and it is robust because we are a services, industry, prevalently, largely, right? So it's a $4 billion market, right? That's going to happen as early as next to next year, and this is representative of 3 times growth that has happened, right, from 2015. And if you see the trend, and if this is any indication, this segment is really going to grow a lot. Now, the question is, if everybody wants to move to cloud and if everybody wants to use cloud computing, who is that everybody, right? There has to be a person who will do this, right? There has to be technologies who will do this, right? So as far as technologies are concerned, as far as the platforms are concerned, the big boys are out there, the big players are out there, right? AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, because they already had a global scale infrastructure, it becomes easier for them to offer cloud services, right? But we also have a lot of Indian players. A solid example is the Control-less data center that was born out of Hyderabad, right? They are a fantastic data center company, right? Similarly, others. So the shift to cloud is happening, but we need people to make that shift happen, right? We need skilled people who understand cloud computing, not just from a perspective of getting a certification and calling themselves architects or engineers and so on, but actually knowing how to build stuff, and more so importantly, how to build stuff that can take failures, right? So this trend is happening in India as well, and the need for cloud professionals is clearly evident. Now, what is being adopted? When we talk about cloud computing, where are people going? Where are companies going to, right? Like I mentioned, the top 3 players are very obvious. It's AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. You also have a couple of other players, but people like Oracle or, for example, IBM Cloud and VMware Cloud uh, largely play in the private cloud space, right? They have a public cloud offering. For example, IBM called its cloud, SoftLayer, and then now it's calling it just IBM Cloud. Uh, because they also have public cloud services, but they largely play in the private cloud space, right? Whereas if you see AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, they are fundamentally into the public cloud services market, which simply means that as an individual customer or as an individual company, you can simply reach out to AWS, Azure, or Google and say, hey, I want these many number of services for this much amount of time frame and investment and so on, and you can simply just consume it as a retail customer, right? And the two different colors that you see here are the growth trends for the last year and for this particular year, right? But remember, these numbers keep on changing, and these numbers will change every quarter. So it's a good idea as an aspiring cloud professional to follow the market and to understand what's happening out there. And for the most primitive question as to who is using cloud today, you have your answer in front of you, right? 96% of people, of companies that were surveyed by RightScale, out of 196 guys said they were using cloud in some or the other form, right? 92% of them are using one or the other type of public cloud. 75% of them have some form of private cloud, and 71% people or the companies have a form of hybrid cloud implementation that they've done for themselves, right? So almost everybody is using cloud, and then that's very clear. It's no more a question of if cloud, but it's a question of when cloud, right? And how, most importantly. Another piece of good news is, I hope you guys can see my next slide. Okay, just a quick question, guys. Can you see this IT infrastructure spend slide here? Okay, right. So like I was discussing, especially in India, right? Also at a global scale, what's happening is we've had traditional data centers out there in the market, and these traditional data centers are getting converted into cloud infrastructures, right? Now, what do you need to convert a traditional data center into a cloud data center? That's out of scope of this discussion. But the fact is, 2/3 of companies globally still use traditional data centers, right? And this number is larger in India. So what you see in front of you is in 2013, 76% the number of data centers that we had globally as well as in India, 76% of them were traditional data centers, and this number is shrinking as you come to 2016. And the reason it is shrinking is because public and private cloud data centers are taking over, and that number will increase with time, right? So it's good news for aspiring cloud professionals, and also for people who think their existing job roles do not offer them enough ROI in terms of both the salaries as well as the job satisfaction that you have, right? Working with an upcoming technology. Again, just an example of the adoption trend. So the numbers are clearly indicative, and the numbers tell all the stories, right? The cloud is growing consistently. So you can look at public cloud, you can look at private cloud, hybrid, as well as if you just had the question of any type of cloud computing, is it growing over time? The answer is a clear yes, right? Now it's not just a question of is cloud. It's not just a question of is cloud computing growing or not, but what is cloud computing doing to the rest of the technology out there, right? So if you had to imagine simply, right, what cloud computing is basically the idea of utility computing realized in terms of technology, right? So like you have electricity, you have water supply, you have gas supply at your places, right? If you had to consume IT, as a pay-as-you-go model, as a utility, as something that you just consume and pay for the amount of services that you have consumed. That's what cloud computing is, right? So computing delivered over internet in a layman's term, and you are charged only for what you use, right? But the idea of cloud by itself has changed a lot of other things, right? So because of cloud, there are companies today uh, whose product is only a set of APIs, right? Today we have companies whose core business and the only business they have is that they have developed a collection of APIs and they sell these APIs to other companies, right? Uh, there are companies who have revolutionized the way software is developed, right? A case in point again is Netflix, right? If you read up about Netflix, if you try to know a bit more about the company, so Netflix, the experience that you get as a customer as a single product, behind the scenes, Netflix developed its entire portfolio of products using microservices, right? Small individual atomic services that do one thing and do that thing very well. And all of these multiple and thousands of services, in fact, microservices come together to give you a one single coherent product, which is Netflix for you, right? So uh, why cloud is important in this case is because the place where you deploy all of these things, the agility that you need to scale up a service like Netflix, and also scale down, right? Vice versa. The agility, the fault tolerance that you need can't be offered by a traditional data center, right? It has to be offered by cloud computing because that's how cloud is designed to work. Cloud is also changing the way you look at data, right? The amount of data storage that's available to you from Dropbox or OneDrive or Google Drive or DigitalOcean or whatever storage service you consume, it's humongous, right? And it's also changing the concept of data, right? Rather than just numbers and strings and images and videos, you have various types of unstructured data, right? People tweet all the time, people hashtag all the time, people chat and comment and annotate and do all of these things. So you have the concept of data lakes coming up, right? So elastic analytical databases, a couple of examples are out there, are being used by people. And as an individual, even as a small startup or even as a larger enterprise, it's very expensive to afford these things, right? To create a huge data lake, on your own cost, on your own infrastructure is a huge investment, right? And unless you can justify the storage cost with the insights that you might want to give to your CEO or your boss, hey, you gave me so much of money to store all of this historical data. Here are the 10 insights that I'm ready to give to you. Only in these kind of cases it's justified. Else, storage is really expensive if you look at it, right? With especially big data. And with things like self-driving cars and Internet of Cities and so on, uh, the idea of edge computing, even fog and mist computing, is taking shape now. Of course, most of it is in research domain now, but it's similar to where a cloud was, at least 15 years ago. So these things will come. And the point that I wanted to make with this particular slide here is cloud is not just a single atomic concept. It's not just something that you can just learn in a span of months and move on, but it's a technological concept. It's a business paradigm that has changed multiple other things, right? So tangential technologies like containers and databases and microservices have changed how we do things, right? How we deal with software. So cloud is a great evolution. Of course, people who know cloud computing will be in demand because it enables you to do so much. And these are just some numbers to help you understand the scale of the compensation that's there. Of course, this is from 2017, but this is purely to give you an idea of how cloud professionals fare against other people with other kind of expertise. Another myth that I wanted to discuss in this particular session is more often than not, people think about cloud just as a set of hardware services, just compute, storage, networking, and that's the end of cloud computing. But to be honest with you, there is much more to cloud than just infrastructure, right? There are things like Docker, which has again taken the industry by storm in the last few years. Whereas the concept of containers that Docker is implementing, it's age old, right? It's really something that has been used in Google from the last decade itself, right? More than 10 years ago, but people didn't care about containers then because they didn't know about it, because they didn't have something like Docker to make it mainstream, right? The idea of DevOps, which again becomes really easy to do on cloud, instead of setting up the entire tool chain for yourself, right? So the idea of DevOps again is not new. In fact, it's not just one single definition that DevOps is. It's a collection of ideas and principles and methods, much like Agile and Lean were for IT industry, right? So it has borrowed a lot from the Agile manifesto, the ideas that were there. It has borrowed a lot from lean manufacturing that the automotive sector has given to us. And again, cloud is about big data, about giving you platform as a service, something like Elastic Beanstalk or Google's App Engine. And it is also about things like OpenStack, which is basically a cloud operating system to help you set up a private cloud, right? So what I wanted to share with you is cloud is way more than just infrastructure. And cloud has become the new way that the IT industry talks about and functions as of today. Right. So what are the top skills that people are looking for in cloud computing, and what are the top skills that industries want to hire for? As far as cloud computing is concerned, it's databases and big data on cloud. It's enterprise cloud migration. This is more so understandable given the Indian services sector scenario, because we will have to move projects from legacy IT to cloud, whether we like it or not, right? Because our customers want it to. There is a lot of demand for, with people of knowledge of containers and container orchestration, specifically Docker and Kubernetes, right? There is also a huge demand of folks who understand DevOps and can do DevOps, more so on the cloud rather than traditional, right? Because it becomes a hassle of maintaining the entire tool chain and doing it all by yourself. So cloud allows you to just consume all the DevOps related services and create your deployment pipeline, right? If you're doing CI/CD and help you create cool stuff, and most importantly, deliver it to your customer in a timely fashion. And because cloud is a distributed network, because it has issues like GDPR and then data security, data localization, obviously security attacks and threats, people who also understand governance and security are in high demand, right? So these are some of the top skills that companies are hiring for. Now, if you're convinced enough about the opportunity that is cloud computing, how should you prepare to make the most of it, right? If you wanted to become a cloud architect or a cloud infrastructure manager or a cloud engineer, how would you go about it, right? A very common sentiment is, many of the younger people entering the workforce just do a certification and consider themselves as architects, right? But this gentleman on the screen, right, who is a vice president, this clearly says, and this is the common sentiment, not just from him, but from many of the industries that we have interacted with, is that we want to hire skilled AWS or Azure or Google solutions architects, right? We do not want to hire just paper certified ones, right? So the most important message here is, irrespective of what cloud platform you want to learn, if you were to become a serious cloud architect, a hands-on cloud professional, you will have to do stuff. You will have to build solutions, right? You will have to solve problems by yourself, right? Certifications are great. Certifications will allow you to, feature on top of others in terms of search filtering and all of that, and then maybe get you a potential interview, right? But what after you get an interview, right? What do you interview with, right? Once you get the interview, your experience will take over, right? You will answer questions based on how you have done things, and if you have really not failed and rectified your solutions and built it all over again, you will not know how things work in real life, right? And certifications teach you how things are supposed to work, but but in real life, that is not how it really works, right? We all know that. So that's the reason we came up with what we offer for cloud computing, and we'll talk about the program specifically, right? But this is a common sentiment across the industry. Now, before I dive into what Great Learning and Great Lakes offer in terms of our cloud computing program, let me take a pause here and let me see if you have any questions. Guys, do we have any questions, or we are good to move ahead? Okay, so if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, Sunila says, does this contain programming? Sunila, you mean the program or the idea of cloud computing itself? Sunila, I got your question, but just for me to understand your question correctly, are you asking if cloud computing needs programming, or this program that we offer from Great Lakes needs programming? What is your question? Okay, meanwhile, let me answer Rohit's question. So Rohit, you can take up the program and you can get to know cloud computing if you do technical sales, right? If you are someone who needs to talk to a customer and convince them about buying a technology solution, buying a cloud-based solution, then this program will be meaningful for you. Okay. And Mohit says OS and server is totally different, so cloud computing based on different OS level. Mohit, that's just a drop in the ocean, and what you are talking about here is basically OS virtualization, right? So it's one of the many ways that you transform a traditional data center into a cloud-based data center. But we discuss much beyond that, and we discuss all the things that you need to become a cloud architect. Okay, Avinash has a question. What level of experience companies expect while hiring? Because it is a new sector and not many people has hands-on experience. Great question, Avinash. So companies, when they hire cloud professionals, they also look at your past experience, right? Even though you might not have past experience working on cloud, but you will have past experience with domain knowledge, right? If you have worked for a project on the banking sector, you will have BFSI domain experience, or insurance, or automotive, or so on, right? So although cloud might be a new technology or business term, your domain expertise will come into account. And the average experience that people come to us from the industry is 11 years of experience. For your second question, Avinash, I'll talk about within the program itself, right? So how Great Lakes equips one person to show hands-on skill to employer. Again, a great question. But just give me a minute, I'll talk about it. Sunila, for your question, does cloud need any programming expertise? The answer is yes and no, right? So the answer is yes if you want to take up a cloud developer role, right? Then you need programming. But if you want to take something like a cloud, architect or a cloud administrator or something of that sort, programming is good to have, but it's not compulsory. It's not mandatory, right? So Neela, I hope I answered your question. It depends on the role that you want to take up. Perfect. Okay. And what kind of skills are required? Some of it I just spoke about a while back when I spoke about what are the top skills that people need. But the next half of the session that we are going to discuss about is exactly what we cover as part of the program. Raghav, if I would like to focus more towards managing cloud-based projects and architecting kind of work. So Raghav, both of them are completely different aspects. Project management is completely different, and architecture is completely different, right? If you want to become a cloud architect, then we have the right program for you. And why is it the right program? I'll talk about the design philosophy just immediately after this question, right? But cloud-based project management is no different from, I mean, it's just slightly different from what you do traditionally, because you need to take care of migration aspects. But it's largely the same that you do with typical project management, right? Okay. Since we are done with the question, let's move on, right? So how can our PGP program in cloud computing set you up for success, right? What do we do as part of this program, right? So it's a 6-month executive program for working professionals like you and I. It is designed for professionals who want to become cloud architects, right? Now, the fact is, not all of you might want to become cloud architects. Some of you might want to become cloud infrastructure managers, or cloud developers, or cloud DevOps professionals, or a cloud financials person. But the trick here is to think like cloud architects, right? Because if you can think like an architect, you have a holistic idea and you can see a holistic picture of what each and every component does in the entire value chain, right? So the program is designed for people to learn exactly that, right? All the pieces of the puzzle as far as cloud is concerned, and look at it from an architect's perspective so that you understand what's really going on and you can add value to your business. The program is delivered, completely online, and it's an online format. What the program does is it does two things for you, apart from all the learning outcomes. Why is it helpful for you? Because it's a mentored learning program, right? For 6 months, when you pursue the program, you learn throughout the week through the video content that we share with you, which is, by the way, really high quality content that we record in our own studio. But every weekend for 2 hours, you meet a mentor who will discuss your questions and use cases and all the doubts that you have, right? So every week you meet with your class peers and the mentor, and you discuss all of your doubts and use cases, right? What that does is it reinforces your learning, right? And the most important aspect of the program, as far as our alumni feedback and student feedback is concerned, is the mentoring sessions, right? Where you get to interact with a mentor and an expert. And as Raghav questioned, how do you help us get hands-on expertise? As part of the program in 6 months, believe me or not, you will do lots of labs and projects, right? Technically, every month you have 3 things to solve for, 2 labs and a project. And if you decide to pursue the program, you will come back and say, hey, by the way, I didn't know if I mentioned my name or not. My name is Deepak. So if you pursue the program, you'll come back and say, hey, Deepak, this is too much hands-on work for me. Can you reduce a bit, right? Can the program reduce it a bit? So that's the amount of practical exposure that you get as part of the program. And people who teach you are people who work in the industry at various levels, and they work in the cloud domain, right? You also get mentored by our past alumni who have pursued our cloud computing program, and are industry experts in their own right, working with various Fortune 100 companies. And finally, you get a certificate from one of the top institutions in India, which is Great Lakes Institute of Management, after you have completed all the program requirements. So that's about the program in a nutshell. So some of the faculty you learn from, right, they all do hands-on work. They all work on cloud as well as other technologies, and they they are people, and this is just a sample list of faculty. There are much more people involved in the entire process, and you'll get to learn from all of them as well, right? But this is just to give you an example of what kind of people you actually learn from. So what will you do as part of the program in 6 months, right? If you want to become cloud architects or cloud engineers or DevOps guys or even cloud financials person, you will do only one thing apart from the entire learning process that will happen to you is build, build, and build. You will get a lot of labs. You will have to spend a lot of time doing those labs, and these labs are rigorous. The projects are rigorous, right? You also have a capstone project which runs in the last 3 months, right? So it will be an intensive program for 6 months. Please do not plan any vacation. Please do not plan any holidays in between. Of course, we give you one program break, which is basically a week's break, but it's a very rigorous program, right? And the reason for this is by design, because we want you guys to have tangible learning outcomes after 6 months, right? Uh, if you wanted to learn something, you can keep learning forever, but realistically you need to fix a time for it. And the number of concepts that we cover, 6 months is sufficient for it, only if you are regular, right? Only if you learn every week, because we have a very carefully designed plan for you, and that plan will only work for you if you allow the plan to work with yourself, right? So you really need to be committed, and it's a really rigorous and hands-on program spanning 6 months. Just a snapshot of what you will be going through, just a snapshot of the entire process. So just for understanding, I have broken this down into phases. So these are not official phases of the program, but this is more so for your understanding, right? What will you do as part of the program, right? So phase 0, or the pre-work phase, like I like to call it, is before you actually start your program. We have a carefully curated set of resources to get you started with cloud computing. Now these resources will help you understand, hey, what happened in the past, why cloud computing and why cloud computing now, what does the future look like, and what are the basic skills that you need to get started as far as this program is concerned. Okay, once you have done that, you actually start learning with the program, and phase 1 is really the foundations phase, right? It's a 1 week phase basically, and you learn all the basics and integrities of, hey, what's virtualization, what is service model deployment, what are the different cloud attributes that you need to understand. And this initial course is to help you learn the absolute basics of cloud. So if you're worried about not having any past exposure to cloud computing, or if you're worried about not knowing anything about cloud computing, uh, please don't worry anymore, right? This program does not assume that you have cloud prerequisites, right? We have some prerequisites, but it's not about cloud. It's about basic understanding of operating systems, or like something working like file systems of Linux and so on, an understanding of networking concepts, right? So, and then you go through all the other phases where you learn core and managed services of AWS, Azure, and I'm happy to announce to all of you is we have added the option of taking up Google Cloud Platform as part of PGPCC, right? So the way it would work is all of the participants, all of the learners will definitely learn AWS, because AWS is the largest player, is the largest platform in terms of market share as well. So you definitely need to know AWS. But after AWS, you can choose either Azure or Google Cloud, depending on your interest and maybe your company project requirements, right? So we have covered all the three platforms, all the three top cloud providers, and you can choose to learn any two of them, right? So that's the latest addition to the program. And you also learn a lot of other things on and cool technologies like Docker, big data, DevOps on AWS, specifically microservices, right? Which is the entire fascinating story of all the concepts and ideas that allowed a company like Netflix to become the #1 software company in terms of what it does. And finally, you'll take a 12-week long project with your team. You form a team with your classmates, and you work on a real life like problem for all of this time, and you take all the steps and you do all the phases from consulting to deployment as part of your capstone project. So It's a long, intensive journey. It's a 6-month program, but you can expect solid learning outcomes at the end of it, right? To help you get a career transition, to help you get the next big opportunity. Of course, we can't guarantee you a placement because all of you are, experienced folks. All of you are mid-career professionals. Placements and guarantees probably might work for freshers in a campus, but in real life, experienced people are not hired, through campus placements. They are hired through networking opportunities. They are hired through the right references. They are hired through the right skills and domain expertise that they have. So we allow you, and we help you do that, right? We will encourage you to connect with your peers in the class who are also working professionals, and people share job opportunities at their own companies every now and then. We also share job opportunities from our side, right? And we let you know, hey, this is the right opportunity for you to apply, and this is where you should apply, right? We also do career development workshop, which is where basically an industry leader will talk to you. And so all of this is, even though online, they'll talk to you about their personal insights and how did they manage change, and how should you go about doing a career transition, right? And you also have industry case sessions to learn from. So that's what we do for all of you as far as career support is concerned. So that's it from my side, everyone. And I'll stop here because we have discussed pretty much what was there on the agenda. And let me see if you have any questions as of now. Right, so we have, I think, about 5 minutes left as far as this session is concerned. So let me wait and see if you have any questions. Happy to answer all of them. Okay, so we have some questions here. Oh, Raghav, I'm so sorry. Did I miss a question? Okay. So for your first question, I think was if I would like to focus more towards managing cloud-based projects. I think I answered this, right? Okay, let me take the other question. Would that be a one-to-one session with the mentor? Raghav, no. So this is a class session. It's not a one-to-one session with the mentor because practically it is infeasible to have one-to-one sessions every weekend for 6 months. But in case if somebody really needs to talk to a mentor and either get career counseling or discuss some technical aspects, a call can be definitely scheduled with the mentor, right? So that is not out of bounds, but the weekend sessions that happen regularly, those are class sessions. I hope I have answered this question about the mentor. Raghav's other question is, how will this course help a 15+ years experience guy in grabbing the opportunities in cloud space? Okay. So Raghav, our average experience age of people who come to learn with us is 11 years. Now at 15+ years, you definitely have some domain expertise that you can add value with. And there might be your own set of reasons why you want to learn cloud, right? And people are skilling in all sorts of areas, including cloud, machine learning, big data, artificial intelligence, deep learning, and so on. So whether we all like it or not, things are supposed to change, and they are changing. As far as the program is concerned, because you do not have experience in cloud, you need to build a body of work, right? By which I mean a portfolio, right? If you look at an artist, or if you look at let's say an actor or somebody, they all have their work portfolios, right? So if you do not have experience in cloud, you need to build a set of projects or a set of a body of work which you can showcase to your employers, right? Potential employers, and say, hey, I have done this particular 6-month rigorous program, and this is my e-portfolio. So I know how to build solutions on cloud, right? That is when you can start applying for opportunities. And to be brutally honest with all of you, right? Career transitions happen in different ways for different people, right? Some of our participants have got career transitions even before they graduated from the program. Some of them got it after a couple of months, and some of them after 6 months, right? So it's an ongoing process, right? You study and work hard for 6 months, and then you start applying for opportunities, and definitely our team assists you, but it's an ongoing process, right? So this course will help you by encouraging you and by recommending you to build a body of work through labs and projects, and the hands-on exposure that you get is unmatched really with any other program that you might come across, because we work backwards from what the industry really needs and what the problem really is. So I hope that might help you, Raghav. Raviraj, okay. Okay, before that, Avinash has a question. Do you provide some credits in AWS accounts? That is correct, Avinash. Yep, that is right. Course fee, you can check on the website. I'm sure the number is still there. Okay, Sunila has a question. What would, okay, again, oh, so two people have asked for course fee. Guys, the last number that I remember is 1.25 lakhs plus taxes, right? That's the program fee. But just to be double sure, please check our website. It's really easy. Just go to greatlearning.in. Let me type it here. Right, so you can just go to this particular website and right, just look at the program fee. Jagdish, do you have programs for AI ML? Yes, Jagdish, we do. Right. Again, you can find out the details on the website. Okay, so I do not see any more questions here. So I'm assuming the afternoon for all of you is fruitful in some or the other way, and I hope the session added value to your knowledge base in a small or the larger way. So thank you all. Thank you to each one of you for attending this afternoon session, and I hope I've been of some help to you, and I look forward to answering your questions. If you have any doubts further, or if you would like to connect one-on-one, you can write to the email address that you have on the screen, and also just give a call to this particular number, right? Okay, we have one more question. Raghav, okay. For practice sessions, do we need to buy our own account? Well, Raghav, the answer is yes and no. Yes, because it always helps to have your own account for practice, right? Because the Great Lakes Lab account will be accessible during certain period of time when you have each lab and project, except for the capstone project. So you get free credits from all the cloud providers, right? AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. So you won't have to spend any amount of money if you do basic practice, unless you consume some expensive services, which we will educate you about, right? Raghav, does that help you? You can create free accounts with all of them. Perfect. AWS or Azure, you can create all three of them free of cost. Beautiful. Okay. So I'm happy since I've answered all the questions, and in the interest of time, it's a perfect record, right? So we have finished right on time, and I'm happy to see all of you. If you have any further questions, reach out to us with the details on the screen, and have a good day. Thank you all, and have a great day. Thanks.